Good morning, everyone. My name is Maryanne. I'm an alcoholic. And I have experience with these steps as they are laid out in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with a Big Book step study sponsor. And I have finished up with my 9th step list, and I am currently working steps 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. And I'm grateful that Jeff asked me to speak this morning because it is definitely a growth experience to be sitting up here. And I'm happy to be sitting next to my friend Mike. So, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics. And so I see this as a couple parts here. My spirit has awakened. I have had that psychic change because of working these steps, the previous steps, all 1 through 11. And I also see this as continuing with my oath from the 3rd step to help another person through the same process. And it's my responsibility to help others, and really it's the joy in my life today. It is a bright spot, and I believe it says bright spot somewhere in our reading here. And I just love the language of AA. I didn't have this language before, and I just had a lot of self-centered fear before coming here. I didn't know that there was an Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew that I had relatives that were drunks, but I kind of liked them, you know, and I couldn't wait not to be in the gutter like them, because I had relatives that couldn't make it home, and I had many relatives in that situation. And but you know, I always, as a young child, I'm talking single digits, little kid, loved watching at Grandpa's house, sitting on the steps and just watching the guys in the kitchen with those little shot glasses and the cigars, and I couldn't wait till it was my turn. And I don't think that was normal. Everyone else was out playing hide and seek and, you know, getting in trouble. But I just was like that, watching and waiting. And anywho, so I took care of that self-centered fear. I didn't have those words, but I took care of that fear by splitting my first King 6-pack of Schlitz, you know, and I just was so excited collecting the money for that, and so excited hanging out the package store for that, and so excited with the thirst of that, and then that took off, and I took care of that self-centered fear by stealing my dad's warm Narragansett, and so I don't even know if they still make that stuff, but so I'm aging myself, but I never missed a weekend in high school. And then the weekends got longer and longer. And my life became, where do I get the money? Who do I drink with? Where do I drink? And so I took care of that self-centered fear with, I can remember MD 2020, because the beer just didn't get me there, you know? So, you know, with the case of beer on my shoulder and the MDD swigging down, wherever I landed when the bottle ended, that's where the party ensued. And so I thought I was having fun, you know, and then I took care of that with Black Russians and whiskey. Whiskey was great. And then fast forward to the end of my drinking, I believe I only drank alcoholically, even though alcohol was always a part of my life. I only drank alcoholically for 3 months. And by that I mean I was no longer able to function or leave the house, and I was taking that morning drink. And I fought that morning drink for a long time. You know, I fought it, and then 5 p.m. showed up, and then I fought it, and 3 o'clock showed up, and I fought it, and noontime showed up, and then the morning drink showed up in that water bottle, you know, with a splash of juice, and I was very protective of that bottle. And I wasn't leaving the house. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to go from windowsill to windowsill to keep track of my kids in the yard. And it's important for me to remember that first drink and that last drink, because from the first to the last, there was always a cry inside of me that just wasn't able to come out, and that was, God, please help me. So I find myself on the bathroom floor night after night, sick, very sick. And I had a very high tolerance, so you know, when I was sick, I realized I had the thought, I think I'm in trouble. And so just remembering the bathroom floor and the sink and looking in the mirror. And I never did that. either, and I never laughed and I never cried, but I did both at this moment. When I looked in the mirror and I saw my mouth move and I heard the words, God, please help me. And I didn't have the wording that was a spiritual awakening then, because I felt that burst of lightning go through me, and it's like, oh, what's this all about? And having that feeling that everything was going to be okay, but I didn't know where that feeling came from. But I know that every single time I asked, God, please help me, that feeling would show up again. And so, I don't know, it was sometime later, I know within the next 24 hours, where my husband at the time said, something that you ate, honey? And it was sarcastic, and I didn't like it. And out of my mouth came, no, I'm an alcoholic. Bam! Where did that come from? I had not even contemplated that alcohol was the problem. And my next thought was, thank you, God. I didn't know what the solution was, but I knew my experience was every time I asked God for help, it came in so many forms. I'd be stuck in the chair, not wanting to drink. This was before finding out about AA. And I'd say, God, help me. And I had a black lab who would drop the ball at my feet, and that would break me out of that morbid reflection. Didn't have those words either, but that's what I was doing because the booze was calling me. And I would just get jostled out of the chair and go out into the yard. And it was a lot of work to go from room to room. And it was a lot. I just remember that life was heavy, life was miserable, life was hard. And so one of those days when I was sitting in a chair, rocking and sweating, not going anywhere too fast, but just like my body was sick and needed a drink, I asked God again for help, and the phone rang, and it was my cousin who was sober, and he was a drunk. I mean, he had built me a sandbox for a six-pack, and he just happened to call out of the blue, and I was able to say, I think I need some help. And I don't know how he knew, but he picked me up. I didn't mean to be picked up right away, but he picked me up right away, and he took me to a noontime meeting. And he gave me my first big book. He had it in his glove compartment. He brought me into the meeting and sat me between some women. And I got phone numbers, and I thought, I'm all set. I got the book, I got numbers, I'm all set. I felt a little lift in my step. And but I didn't know how to open the book. I didn't know how to read. And so just fast forward, I find myself, my boss called me because she was concerned I wasn't showing up at work. And we had a little meeting at work, and there were 8 women in the room. And I'm sweating and shaking again. And she asked if there was something I wanted to share. And then out of my mouth came, I haven't had a drink in 27 days, and I need a drink, and I don't want to drink. And everyone in that room had something to do with recovery at one form or another, whether it be Al-Anon or OA or AA. But it was Pat, who was from AA, and she always bothered me. My irritant was my teacher, and Pat took me. Anyways, it became a meeting right then and there. And I was able to talk about what was going on in my life, and they listened. And it felt wonderful, and I never wanted to leave them. I never wanted to go home. I wanted to stay right there in that protective grace of God. And Pat took my hand and took me to a meeting, and it was under the condition that it would not be in Worcester, because I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want to be one of you, kind of was my attitude. It was my fear. And so she took me to a meeting in Westboro, and it was step 9, and I knew many years ago that I'd never be an alcoholic, because I had been privy. People were planting seeds, and I read the steps. When I came to step 9, I was like, never. And it was a step 9 meeting, and I had that chuckle of, you are funny, God. Thank you, God. And I had that, thank you, God, thank you, God. and watching the clock and looking at it going around the room and counting how many minutes it's going to be to me, and I'm shaking again. And so they saved the last 5 minutes, and oh man, that bothered me. Last 5 minutes for the newcomers, so all the eyes went on me. And I'm crying, and I'm saying, I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic, I just said, my name is Maryanne, and I'm not on 9, I'm on step 1. And the unconditional love that poured out to me, and my recovery took off, because I liked how that felt. The fellowship, the love, the unconditional love that I was not privy to until that moment. So I saw God working in my life right away, but didn't know how to talk about that, didn't know how to express that. That was foreign to me. And so fast forward many years in AA, making progress, working the steps off the banner in the rooms, and just staying miserable. Moments of happiness, but just basically was that restless, irritable, and discontent was always that brewing around in me. And whenever I would ask God for help, He always showed up in my life with I'd see the same person in a short period of time. There always seemed to be in groups of 3. Or I'd hear about a meeting for the 3rd time, or about a retreat, or about a book. It was always, I was paying attention. I knew that much. I was paying attention to God. I just wasn't sharing Him with anyone. I wasn't sharing anything with anyone. And I heard Big Book Step Study, and I heard it several times in that short period of time, and I had that, threw my hands up in the air and that surrender. Okay, God, I'll do that. And I showed up at a meeting, and I loved what I heard. I was like, wow, I just was filled up with, as what I know now is the solution of other people's higher powers and how their lives were changed. And so I got involved immediately with the reading. When I said I was reading, I was reading. When I said I was writing, I was writing. And anyways, the process, I worked at it diligently every day. And didn't take me years. It took me less than a year to finish my 9th. I just was like plugging forward. I wanted to be happy, joyous, and free. And these steps have done that for me. So because of the work, because of my 3rd step, taking that oath to help another person through, I knew every time I felt that self-centered fear, I would say, God, please put a woman in my life that I can help. Because it was always in helping others that I got rid of that self-centered yuck. And I was able to share my higher power. I was able to walk a woman through the process and put their hand in their higher power's hand. It wasn't my God, it was helping them to see their God. And my sponsors helped me with that process, because I found myself wanting to do the work for people. I so wanted to tell people what I was seeing and hearing in them, but it was up to them. It was their journey. It was their story. So I would just share my experience, my strength, and my hope, which I never knew what those words meant. But I do know that this book has all my answers. I know this to be true, because people showed it to me. And I love, some meetings use the opening of, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And that whole paragraph there had the word honesty, honesty, honesty all through it. So honesty is a requirement, having an open mind and that willingness, how this program works. So if this program is going to work for me, it says if I follow the directions in this book, I will not fail. And so there are promises throughout there. So in the second paragraph here in our reading today, I just love this. And just the first sentence is highlighted, and life will take on a new meaning. That has happened for me. I have purpose now in my life, whereas before I felt like I was spinning a lot of wheels. directing a lot of people, controlling a lot of things, and being out of control. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see the fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. And I think that's beautiful. So that's a promise that's come true for me. And so I know that it says somewhere in the book too, you'll be rocketed into the fourth dimension. So before, my senses of seeing and hearing and all had to do with self-centeredness. Now, my life has a lot of depth and weight. I spend time when I open my eyes immediately in prayer. My sponsor taught me, from bed to the teapot, your alcoholic mind is going to start. and your first good idea is probably not going to be a good one. So I wake up and my first thought is, good morning, God. And I say my first 3 steps on my knees. I just assumed everyone did that, but it works for me. I get on my knees and I ask God to please keep me from a drink today. Isn't that my step 1? Because I admit I'm powerless. To save me from alcoholic thinking. I really have a thinking problem. Today I don't trust my first thought. My second thought must be, God, I know you will do this if I ask. And I have not missed that in all these years. And then I say my 3rd step prayer, real slow. I've learned over the years how to say it slower, out loud, to feel it. The 5th dimension, to feel it, not just to know it, not just to blah, blah, blah it, to feel it. What does it mean? And I love how that feels, And I say a few other prayers, 7-step prayer. The book is loaded. The easiest prayer for me is, God, please help me. Works every time. No matter where I am, no matter who I'm with, especially when I'm alone. It works. So I'm just going to go through, I'm not going to go through because we read all the directions. They're everywhere. They're everywhere through the book here. Every paragraph's got directions of what to do and what to don't. And I didn't have these directions. I need to speak about my sister Kathleen. And she did not get the honesty that it speaks about here. And I just love losing her name. Anyways, she died from this disease not knowing she had a disease. And my directions were one of these, just shaking my finger at her. And my cries would be, well, maybe if I bring her soup again or flowers again, she'll get this. And it says here to do it without nagging. I'm sure she heard it with nagging. I know that now to be true, with nagging. I sent many people to her. I thought I was the only one trying to save her. I was playing God. I know that now. And after she passed, this is how, pay attention how God works in your life. This is how God works in my life. I had the scary thought of, that's it. FAA, I ain't going anymore. That attitude. It was no longer a simple attitude. I could not find my simple tools. That simple, keep it simple thing was not. It was heavy again. And I was mad, I was angry. And so I got the attitude, as I had many times in my recovery. Okay, God. I just laughed when how I used to speak to him, and how I still can, I suppose. Okay, God, I'm going to go to one more meeting, but if I don't hear anything, I'm not going again. And I did the simple things that I was taught in early recovery, to go into a meeting, sit next to a woman, introduce yourself, ask her what meeting she goes to. Simple things. Not always easy to do. I was heavy. I walked in, sat next to this woman, introduced myself, did what I was taught, and that I practiced over and over again. So I had that tool, that particular moment, and didn't Trish, through our conversation, try to help my sister Kathleen. She worked with her. She hung out with her for years. And just burdens, heavy burdens that I carried were lifted. And I paid attention how God was in my life, seeing that many people loved Kathleen. Many people love drunks. Many people loved me, the seeds that were planted with me. I'm just grateful that I was able to have that moment of truth and to be honest. And her life has had purpose. Many people, because of her death, have gotten sober. I like to think it was because of my anger getting in their face, but I know that God allowed them to hear when it was their time to hear, that they too had this disease. This makes me think of my dad too. My dad, in his Alzheimer's, would, first of all, I got to back up my relationship with him. I did not see him for many, many years, like a dozen years, because of this attitude that I'd have, blaming him, and how God changed me through my step work to allow me to wave, ring his doorbell, and to have him back in my life. So I was able to be that instrument of peace in this man's life. I was able to be there and adore him. That's definitely God. I could not do that myself. The gift of forgiveness, I could not do myself. But these steps have done that. And so I'm with this man and I'm helping him through his disease. And he would say just pay attention to what people say. He would be so profound and he would tap his head and just say, "Oh, Mary, if I could just go to a meeting to take care of this." He knew he had a disease and the medication was making him sick. And I would share my higher power with him and he would share his. And what a beautiful gift it was. And how true, how simple. Go to a meeting, ask for help. Simple things, but not always easy for us alcoholics because we have that alcoholic mind. We have the disease that wants us sick, doesn't want us to know that we're sick, not well. Anywho, so there's a lot of directions here. I sponsor a lot of women. I'm grateful every time I ask God to put someone in my life. Bam, there she is. And it's a wonderful relationship. Very unique in personalities, each woman that's in my life, but we're not so unique because we all have the same emotions. We all have the same disease, and it expresses itself. Our notebooks show it. It doesn't matter who the person is that we resent or what the fear is. It doesn't matter what they did or didn't do. It matters how it affects us, and that's what we all have in common. And it's always that self-esteem fear. And so I talk about my physical allergy, I talk about my mental obsession with alcohol, and I listen to them share their story about their bottom. And then we speak about the higher power, sharing through our stories, our spiritual experience, and then we get into the solution, which is in the book, which is in the steps. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that someone took the time to help me. I'm grateful, first of all, that I asked for help. And I'm grateful that other people asked for help as well. There was a sentence here that I'd be remiss if I didn't speak about that. When it was read today, it has depth and weight for me at the moment. So it says here, to be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice, and unselfish and constructive action. And I always knew I heard the understanding comes after the action, and I never knew what that meant. But I can think about this all day long. I can think about going to a meeting. I can think about getting on my knees. I can think about making a phone call. But if I don't do these things, I don't get well. So faith without works is dead. And I'm grateful to be in recovery. Wherever you are in this process, please keep doing this. I came to understand that I am worth it. So that's a promise too. And I just want to close with this, because I know this closing, it just reminds me here that our book is meant to be a suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome? So thanks for listening. Glad to be here.